What if the government was lying to you about UFOs, not to hide aliens but to hide incompetence? In 1965, police tracked objects diving 18,000 feet in seconds. The Air Force said they were chasing Jupiter. In 1966, officers chased a silver disk across 85 miles of Ohio and Pennsylvania. The official explanation? Venus and a communications satellite. But here's what they didn't want you to know. The same scientist who helped debunk UFOs for 2 decades finally admitted the investigations were a sham. So if it wasn't Venus and it wasn't Jupiter, what were these officers really chasing? And why did the Air Force work so hard to convince you it was nothing? Stick around, because the documents they didn't destroy tell a very different story. Mayor Hector Quintanilla's own perspective on the project is documented in his manuscript, UFOs, an Air Force Dilemma. Lieutenant Colonel Quintanilla wrote the manuscript in 1975, but it wasn't published until after his death in 1998. In the text, Quintanilla states that he personally believed it was arrogant to think human beings were the only intelligent life in the universe. Yet, while he found it highly likely that intelligent life existed beyond Earth, he had no hard evidence of any extraterrestrial visitation. Mayor Hector Quintanilla took over as Blue Book's leader in August 1963. He largely continued the debunking efforts, and it was under his direction that Blue Book received some of its sharpest criticism. UFO researcher Jerome Clark goes so far as to write that, by this time, Blue Book had lost all credibility. Physicist and UFO researcher Dr. James E. McDonald once flatly declared that Quintanilla was not competent from either a scientific or an investigative perspective. Although he also stressed that Quintanilla shouldn't be held accountable for it, as he was chosen for his position by a superior officer and was simply following orders in directing Blue Book. Blue Book's explanations of UFO reports were not universally accepted, however. Critics, including some scientists, suggested that Project Blue Book performed questionable research or, worse, was perpetrating a cover-up. This criticism grew especially strong and widespread in the 1960s. Consider the many, mostly nighttime, UFO reports from the Midwestern and southeastern United States in the summer of 1965. Witnesses in Texas reported multicolored lights and large aerial objects shaped like eggs or diamonds. The Oklahoma Highway Patrol reported that Tinker Air Force Base near Oklahoma City had tracked up to 4 UFOs simultaneously, and that several of them had descended very rapidly, from about 22,000 feet to about 4,000 feet in just a few seconds. An action well beyond the capabilities of conventional aircraft of the era. John Shockley, a meteorologist from Wichita, Kansas, reported that, using the State Weather Bureau radar, he tracked a number of odd aerial objects flying at altitudes between about 6,000 and 9,000 feet. These and other reports received wide publicity. Project Blue Book officially determined the witnesses had mistaken Jupiter or bright stars, such as Rigel or Betelgeuse, for something else. Blue Book's explanation was widely criticized as inaccurate. Robert Reiser, director of the Oklahoma Science and Art Foundation Planetarium, offered a strongly worded rebuke of Project Blue Book that was widely circulated. He said, "That is as far from the truth as you can get. These stars and planets are on the opposite side of the Earth from Oklahoma City at this time of year. The Air Force must have had its Starfinder upside down during August." A newspaper editorial from the Richmond News Leader opined that attempts to dismiss the reported sightings under the rationale as exhibited by Project Blue Book won't solve the mystery and serve only to heighten the suspicion that there's something out there that the Air Force doesn't want us to know about. Meanwhile, a Wichita-based UPI reporter noted that ordinary radar does not pick up planets and stars. Another case that Blue Book's critics seized upon was the so-called Portage County UFO chase, which began at about 5:00 a.m. near Ravenna, Ohio, on April 17, 1966. Police officers Dale Spaw and Wilbur Neff spotted what they described as a disc-shaped, silvery object with a bright light emanating from its underside at about 1,000 feet in altitude. They began following the object, which they reported sometimes descended as low as 50 feet. Police from several other jurisdictions were involved in the pursuit. The chase ended about 30 minutes later near Freedom, Pennsylvania, some 85 miles away. The UFO chase made national news, and the police submitted detailed reports to Blue Book. 5 days later, following brief interviews with only one of the police officers, but none of the other ground witnesses, Blue Book's director, Major Hector Quintanilla, announced their conclusions. The police, one of them an Air Force gunner during the Korean War, had first chased a communications satellite, then the planet Venus. This conclusion was widely derided, and police officers strenuously rejected it. In his dissenting conclusion, Hynek described Blue Book's conclusions as absurd. In their reports, several of the police had unknowingly described the Moon, Venus, and the UFO, though they unknowingly described Venus as a bright star very near the Moon. Ohio Congressman William Stanton said that the Air Force has suffered a great loss of prestige in this community. Once people entrusted with the public welfare no longer think the people can handle the truth, then the people in return will no longer trust the government. In September 1968, Hynek received a letter from Colonel Raymond Sleeper of the Foreign Technology Division. Sleeper noted that Hynek had publicly accused Blue Book of shoddy science and further asked Hynek to offer advice on how Blue Book could improve its scientific method. Hynek was to later declare that Sleeper's letter was, quote, the first time in my 20-year association with the Air Force as scientific consultant that I had been officially asked for criticism and advice regarding the UFO problem. Hynek wrote a detailed response, dated October 7, 1968, suggesting several areas where Blue Book could improve. In part, he wrote, neither of the two missions of Blue Book, determining if UFOs are a threat to national security and using scientific data gathered by Blue Book, are being adequately executed. The staff of Blue Book, both in numbers and in scientific training, is grossly inadequate. Blue Book suffers in that it is a closed system. There is virtually no scientific dialogue between Blue Book and the outside scientific world. The statistical methods employed by Blue Book are nothing less than a travesty. There has been a lack of attention to significant UFO cases and too much time spent on routine cases and on peripheral public relations tasks. Concentration could be on 2 or 3 potentially scientifically significant cases per month, instead of being spread thin over 40 to 70 cases per month. The information input to Blue Book is grossly inadequate. An impossible load is placed on Blue Book by the almost consistent failure of UFO officers at local air bases to transmit adequate information. The basic attitude and approach within Blue Book are illogical and unscientific. Inadequate use had been made of the project scientific consultant, Hynek himself. Only cases that the project monitor deems worthwhile are brought to his attention. His scope of operation has been consistently thwarted. He often learns of interesting cases only a month or two after the receipt of the report. Despite Sleeper's request for criticism, none of Hynek's commentary resulted in any substantial changes in Blue Book.